So, sketchbook number 11. This one brings us bang up to date, April to October this year, 2023. And it's pretty much more of the same, actually. Lots of holidays away in northern France and Budapest. Lots of places in London. I do get back occasionally, even though I'm living on the southeast coast now. And lots of places in and around where I live. So let's get started. Yeah, I mean, the first couple of pages for me, I always like to, whenever I go traveling, little tickets and little museum stubs and receipts for dinner and things like that, I like to keep and stick in the first couple of pages. It's almost like when you had a jotter at school, you sort of keep little things and stick them in. So I think probably the first 2 pages is really me getting to grips with a new sketchbook. As you creative types will know, any illustrators and creative people out there, whatever pens you're using, whether you're used to them or not. It's a funny thing that the first sketchbook, the first couple of pages are brand new when you take the wrapping off. It's always a bit of a pensive moment, isn't it? So this was a really good excuse. I think I probably went up to London to meet friends or go and see a show at some point. And I was just getting used to drawing in a sketchbook again, really, because once one has been filled and I do these little talks, I normally have a little bit of a break of a couple of weeks, and it depends what else is happening in my world of illustration and what I have to do on a day-to-day basis. But it's lovely to get back into it because they really set the tone, the first 1 or 2 pages for me. And I think the best thing is just to really delve into it and get started. So it's the usual thing. This is Blackfriars Bridge, and I'm actually standing on the platform where the trains come in. This is where the sort of traffic heads over. A little bit of construction work, restoration work on the Victorian part of Blackfriars Bridge. So that was a nice sort of hour or so just before meeting friends, I think. Just sort of whiling away. And again, I'm using the Liquitex pens that feature quite heavily in the past couple of sketchbooks. And they're just really nice introduction into sort of recent events because they're very chunky and you can really sort of mess about with them. And they act as a really good base coat, if you like, acrylic paints, for the finer detailed work. So there's not really much change. Globe Theatre, just over the way, probably about a 5-minute walk from the first drawing. So these two were kind of together within the space of about 3 hours. Finding myself a little spot amongst all the tourists. I really like to immerse myself now. I've been doing this for quite a long time, and it's I do get a little bit of a buzz out of standing in a place. Sometimes, if I'm honest, if I'm slightly in the way of people, I don't mind it too much now. But years ago, when I first started doing these reportage sketchbooks, it was a fear that I really had to battle, and I think a lot of reportage artists out there will probably feel the same way. So this one's back home. This is in Ramsgate where I live now, and a replica galleon, Spanish galleon ship came in. We had a mini festival down here last summer at the beginning of this summer, 2023. So I just wanted something bright, very colourful. It was a lovely sunny day, just getting the paints out. And again, with this base coat, I'm just mixing up acrylic paints, just using usual kind of brush, nothing too expensive, nothing extravagant, just to put down the base coat, let that dry, and then getting one of these Posca pens that I do talk about quite a lot. These are the sort of staple pens that I use now over the years, just to create something a little bit different, really. But I'm always intrigued by colour combinations, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the book, just about what is working. And I don't really like, when I'm out and about, to take too many pens with me. I'm not one of these reportage illustrators that will sit with everything in front of them. I do like to travel light, and I think that's because most of the time when I'm traveling abroad, I don't like to take too many things with me, too many materials. And it really sort of sharpens your sort of expectations in a way. If you, I always think if you have too many materials to hand, then you're wasting a lot of valuable time where you could be really focusing on really getting into it. So the colour combinations for this one, quite unusual actually, just to have a yellow base and the green for the actual detailed work, and then this pink sort of coral colour that actually worked quite well against the yellow there. So I'm always trying to push the boundaries within the sort of realm of the materials that I use, if that makes sense. And this one is a new pen actually. It's a pink one, a very light pink. Didn't quite work because it's again, when I came to posting it, because it's so light you could hardly see the pen work. But this is the Shard. I think this was on the same day as the first two, Blackfriars Bridge and Globe Theatre. This one actually didn't take too long because I was trying to get the perspective right and try and fill the whole page and really try and get the whole of the Shard onto the page, which was very difficult. But I just wanted that difference in between the colour combinations, first of all, and really for you to see the edges of, this was the edge of Borough Market, the Southwark Tavern pub. So we have three colour combinations that have worked really well in the past, again, Posca pens. And there's nothing particularly fancy about this one, it was just wanted to get it down on the page because I thought it was such an interesting composition. So we're dealing with purple for the foreground, and then the middle ground is red where you can see a little bit of the building work here. It would have been nice to encapsulate more of the buildings here, maybe sort of bring this one a little bit forward and sort of cheat a little bit, but you kind of get the idea. A lot of it's just about experimentation, and you know, when you're committing with, particularly my sort of style and the way I work, when I commit myself to lines, and once you're sort of committed, you can't really back out. And I kind of like that because it's very, you're sort of insisting on where certain lines are going to be, and you really have to stick to it. And all the time when you're mark making, you're putting down pen marks, and you have to really think about the mistakes that you've just made, and it could be a problem later on, but all the time that you're drawing things, you have to be problem solving. So I quite like that element of it as well. So this one was, I don't normally do this, but I was testing out some pens before I went to Budapest. So this was the Chain Bridge in Budapest. And it was actually closed, funnily enough, once we got over there, me, my brother and his friend. We went for a long weekend, and this particular bridge was closed to the public. They were renovating it. So this one actually wasn't in situ, so this is why I haven't posted it onto Instagram. So again, just using these kind of Liquitex pens just to get a base of a particular structure. But this is, once I was there, this is the Liberty Bridge, which is actually a more interesting one to sketch, using the same technique. So this one probably took about an hour or so. It's a Victorian ironwork, really beautiful bridge. Very popular with the tourists. Sometimes they climb all the way up to this section. Selfies, etc. So I think once I posted this one, if you go back through my post, you can see people sort of dotted around and trams go through and over. So it makes for a really good photo opportunity. And again, Budapest, this was the last sketch. This one was really interesting because it has a lot of fond memories for me. It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and there was some kind of fun run, marathon run, going through the city, and alongside here, next to the river Danube. And if you see, if I sort of hold the sketchbook up a little bit, It's actually, there is a lot of detail, and I'll speak a little bit more about this because there's a couple of sketches in this book where I concentrate on a particular building that has a lot of detailed architecture. And the only challenging thing for me for this particular sketch was the actual angle. So if you're looking at the certain lines here, there's always going to be errors and places within the sketch that I'm not particularly happy with. But basically all you're doing is just following the lines. It's quite hard to describe. And again, I think for a lot of people that do this on a regular basis, that are out there and really challenging themselves to draw anything like this, whether it's the Houses of Parliament in London or something like this in Budapest, to find an interesting angle, I think, is a great starting point. And once you've immersed yourself into the scene and the scene around you, it's a great way to actually, the dot-to-dot method that I have talked about on a few occasions with these talks. But really all you're concentrating on is, because they're very repetitive, and you're concentrating on where the tops of these turrets, for example, or the tops of these arches are, and you're following it along a particular guide. So there we go. So that's that one. Hopefully I kind of explained how I work. I mean, with this one, I do get a lot of comments on particularly more interesting, more detailed architectural sketches where I actually start. And with this one, it was impossible to kind of have everything into the composition. I wanted a more dynamic composition, really. And I think with this one in particular, if memory serves me well, it was really all about trying to get as much detail as possible without putting the detail in. So that might not make any sense to you whatsoever, but really just with, as I said before, with the arches and all the little sort of points of interest, just hints of them, really. Just hints of little sections, little lines, just so that every point along the way, you're helping yourself, you're guiding yourself into it. But I think with this one, I probably started around this shape here because I wanted to get the dome section correct. So I left that for later on because I knew that that was going to be okay. But at this point here, because I knew this section, I wanted most of it to fit on the page. And I knew at this point here was sort of fairly central to the page. So working my way down and then working to the left, concentrating on this section for a while, and then moving on to the right section. So this one was, these two drawings were from 22 Bishopsgate in London. So I had an opportunity to meet with a really good friend of mine called Phil Dean, who's also called the Shoreditch Sketcher. And so I put a little reel together afterwards because we've been great friends for a couple of years, but we never really had any opportunity or time to come together and actually sketch together. So this was the perfect opportunity. He did some work, he did some beautiful murals of the City of London in their offices. And he still has some contact details. He got in contact with them. And we actually went down on a Saturday when nobody was in the office, so we had free rein to the place, so it was fantastic. The only funny point of it was that because it was a particularly sunny day, sunny afternoon, and I think as the sun is kind of arcing around, the shutters automatically come down, the blinds. So we would be really racing against time towards the end of these particular sketches to get everything down that we needed to get down before the actual blinds came down. So these two are from that afternoon. And it's just a great vantage point because a lot of the time you don't get access to buildings like this, and I was very fortunate. And as you'll see later on through this sketchbook and through a lot of research that I do on Google, I'm always, because I don't live in London anymore, so if I'm down for the day, I want to make the most use of my time as possible to try and find different aspects and different buildings and on top of buildings, views of London. Because it's such a varied city and you do see a lot from ground level, but once you're above it, and it was so quiet up there as well. It was an amazing afternoon. This one is going up towards Liverpool Street Station, is just here. So these ones I'll talk briefly about Paris. Me and my girlfriend went over in May, towards the end of May. And really what I wanted to do was, and again, because the time limitations with my sketches, they take up to at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I'm always conscious, especially when I'm traveling with another person, that, you know, I'm sort of indulging myself in this whilst the other person is maybe getting bored, or, you know, how many coffees can you drink in 2 hours? So again, it's really worthwhile, and I would advise anyone to do a little bit of research. It is very nice to walk around a city, maybe if you've been to that city a few times before in the past, or if it's a new city, just to walk around without any particular plans. But particularly the way I work, I really like to find certain parts of the city that are slightly unusual. So I found this particular site, the Eiffel Tower in the background, surrounded by trees, at the end of this particular street, and it's very popular with the tourists for selfies, etc. And it was a very simple, very complicated sketch in terms of the composition and the detail, but very simple in terms of the color combination. I've used this many times before, and actually on one of my first holidays, where I was really discovering more with the Posca pens and the compositions in San Francisco back in possibly 2017, where I talk about the use of depth. So the lighter pen for the background and the foreground is a much darker ink. And if there's some kind of similarity between, you know, the purple isn't too far away from the blue in terms of the color palette, the color spectrum, if you like. So it's really I managed to get 3 sketches, one at least in Paris. I wanted to be slightly different, but very recognizable in the fact that this is the Eiffel Tower, or a section of it in the background. And this one, Montmartre in Paris. It was, again, a very hot afternoon, lots of tourists, as you would expect, lots of people having lunch, wandering around, taking photos, buying little bits and pieces. And I managed to find a little section that wasn't too engulfed by people sort of wandering around. So this one worked out really well. And again, it's very straightforward. We're using that color combination again. You know, we're using these Liquitex pens just to get a base color. And it's just working very quickly with a couple of materials to hand. And I didn't really want to waste too much time. And the same with this one as well, the gardens that surround the Louvre Gallery. I was walking around for quite a while trying to decide what kind of angle I wanted. And I decided on this one in the end. And I'm glad I did, actually. I love the aspect of this. The trees on the left-hand side slowly disappearing, but they're all so in sequence with each other, slowly disappearing, and with the people as well, the shadows that I'm making, again, with the Liquitex pen, and really capturing that sort of Parisian life, really. I suspect that these were tourists just having a moment, maybe a bunch of students just having a moment, relaxing in the shade, waiting for other people to come along. And they were there for quite a while, actually, the whole time that I was sketching this, which probably took about an hour and a half. And just as I was taking photos to later post onto Instagram, they all got up to slowly leave. So it was perfect timing. back home in Ramsgate. This one got quite a few likes actually, which is great. I think possibly because of the red and the coral pink is slowly sort of immersing into each other as the boats slowly start to disappear, and you have the harbour wall going around. But it was a very simple one morning, walking down, had a coffee, sat on a bench, probably took me about an hour or so. This one was very early, just setting myself up, people wandering past, walking their dogs, again having coffees and just wandering around. So that was quite a nice start to the day. There's so many different angles to choose from, and I've picked quite a few in the past. It's not a particularly big harbour, but there's lots of different opportunities. You have old boats in there that are constantly moored, that have seen a little bit more service, they have more history. And then these ones, people actually live on these boats, so they're sort of, some of them are constantly moored there, but some of them go out for the weekend or... And then we have a lot of churches in Ramsgate as well, so some page fillers really just experimenting with colour combinations, these three in particular. This one wasn't so successful for me. It's actually the Sailors' Church that is only moments away from this site here. But the doors are open, free for anyone to go in. Just sat there for maybe 30 minutes, half an hour. This one didn't take me that long to do. And this one sat outside on the grass. Again, experimenting. I think I just bought a new, slightly thicker Posca pen in this aqua green colour that I'm really into at the moment, or have been in particular with this sketchbook. And this is the local church. This is literally opposite to me, Trinity Church in Ramsgate. Had a lovely reception in there. When I told them what I did and showed them previous works, they were sticking the kettle on and feeding me with homemade chocolate cookies. That was a lovely afternoon. And Margate is just up the road from me, so it's only a bus ride away. And I love the sort of difference in between. You get it in here in Ramsgate, but not so much. In Margate, there's more of a promenade on the seafront, where you have all these gaudy sort of architectural designs to entice people into the slot machines and everything, and the rides. And then you have the really old architecture. This is on a roundabout, the Clock House, the sort of central part of Margate that everyone knows really well. So I love the difference in between the two, and trying to capture the two at the same time in one composition. And this is the Ferris wheel in Dreamland. And this is very much the reality of a lot of seaside towns, abandoned cars with rubbish and things like that. So I really wanted to show seaside towns as they actually are, or as they can be once you start walking down all the back streets. And my town is very much like that as well. So I just wanted to show the difference, the realness, I guess. And this is just walking up towards Broadstairs. Again, just mixing with the pens, just having a bit of fun. Wasn't really intending on this particular site, but it didn't take me very long. Again, experimenting with different brush pens. And this one again towards Broadstairs. Really lovely small town, lots of nice restaurants and bars. Fantastic in the summer, lovely beach. So I'm very lucky to be living around this part, I would say that, but it's great for artists. There's lots of creative types that are already well established in the Margate area because they come down from London. They call us DFLs, down from London. Some people like us, some people don't, but it's all good fun. And this is a very run-down building in Margate. Really went to town on this one, just with all different pens and things. Again, having some fun. and this one of Margate. I think I just had a hive of activity over one particular week where I was just getting the train on a lot of days just down there, because I realised that it's not that far away, it's the neighbouring town, but I hadn't really explored it as much as I should have done. So it was really nice to sort of wander around. But this is the seafront, Dreamland. Very famous council block building there. Some people like it, some people don't. Back in Ramsgate, experimenting again with all different colour combinations. So this is another one in London, the Post building, which is in Bloomsbury, and it's free to go in during the week. If there's any budding artists out there watching this that really want to explore more of a rooftop view of London, and it really is stunning. So it's called the Post building. It's in Bloomsbury, which is near only a couple of minute walk away from the British Museum. And unfortunately, it's not available at weekends, but Monday to Friday, you can go in, and there's a little security guard at the bottom there that just looks through your bag for security reasons, and then sends you up in the lift to the top floor, and you can stay up there for as long as you like. So there were 2 visits for me. This is the first one, just trying to capture as much as possible. This one was quite a sunny day, but very windy. And then this one was possibly a couple of weeks later, looking over the British Museum there, the dome designed by Sir Norman Foster. So some beautiful architecture. And I really like these colour combinations, actually. Again, just doing a little bit of work with the thicker Posca pens. Some crayons coming out here, the Caran d'Ache ones. So I'd probably be using something like this. I think I've shown you guys these kind of crayons that I like to use before. They don't get much of an outing. I'm not too confident with those. Maybe I should have a whole book devoted to pencil crayons rather than Posca pens. There's something to think about. Back home in Ramsgate, a very quick one of the Servia. So this is one of the older boats that's permanently moored there. Gets a lot of attention. It's a little tugboat. So this is on sorry, no, not on Fleur, Rouen. So this was the first place that me and my girlfriend went to. It was very much a driving holiday. So the story behind northern France was that we have a very good friend that drinks in the same local pub that basically lent his apartment, his house in northern France for 10 days. And because we were doing a lot of driving, well, I don't drive, but my girlfriend did a lot of driving. So we stopped at Rouen first for a couple of days, then drove to northern France. And then that gave us an opportunity to really explore a lot of towns like Le Mans, which we'll come up to in a second. And then lastly to Honfleur before we came home. So we were away for nearly 2 weeks, and it was a great time to sort of explore different places. So this was the first one. So this is the Grue Horloge. I think I've pronounced that right. It's an astronomical clock from, I think, the 13th or 14th century, this section here. And I just loved all the different architectural aspects of this corner. And as you would expect, it's very touristy, really nice cobbled streets. Such a beautiful city, Rouen. So I wanted to document this. Again, just getting the pens out, just wondering which pens I haven't used for a while. This one got an incredible amount of likes. So if anyone was responsible for that, that's watching this short film, then thank you very much. So this was the Notre Dame Cathedral in the centre of Rouen, and I didn't really want to go and try and document all of it because it would have taken me too long, and I think that's just a little bit samey, a little bit boring. I like to concentrate on a particular area of an architectural building like this with such beauty. and I had limited time. It probably took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours, just in the evening, probably around 6 o'clock in the evening, just before we went out for dinner. And again, it's the same principle that I was talking about with the Parliament building in Budapest. You really only, and this was a little bit easier because I was looking at it face on, and you're sort of taking notes from the architectural designs, and they are very repetitive, very Gothic. And because I've been filling sketchbooks like this for quite a while, a number of years now, so you get used to certain rhythms, certain patterns within architectural styles of churches in different countries. So it's very much for me about getting certain elements here down with the dot to dot method. So you're really with the pen just dotting out, literally going like this, just to get this triangle here is going to be about here. And it's really focusing your mind on what area you need to be concentrating on for the next 5 or 10 minutes. And then let's move to this area, let's move to this area. So once you have a certain pattern down, and I knew that I wanted to encapsulate this very central archway and this triangle shape here, and then this section going across here. So once I knew I had that down, the rest of it would be relatively simple to put down as well. But it's very effective, and I think some of the cross-hatching and some of the shading as well really added to the sense of depth. And it's a tip that I picked up a long time ago with the Posca pens, because they are very immediate. I think the only way to use them when you're trying to create shade is not to go in with block colours. I have done that on certain parts here because it was called for. But other parts where it's not so shaded, but it is slightly shaded, is just to produce lines just a little bit apart from each other, maybe a couple of millimeters. And then once it's very close shadow, almost very dark, you close up these lines so they're very, very close together. And it's a very simple tip, but particularly with a detailed sketch like this, you needed that difference to bring things in and out of perspective, because otherwise this line work would have been very flat and your eye would have been very confused. So this was Camp Freddy. So basically our friend Fred, who very kindly lent us his house in northern France, and he's had this place for about 20 years, slowly doing it up. So we stayed there for, I think it was for about 10 days. Very relaxed. There was no TV, no Wi-Fi. For some people that would be absolute hell, but for us it was amazing. He had a great record collection, lots of board games, and you know, we read quite a lot, and it was just great. You know, it was just a really, really nice. You have food markets close by. It was a very tiny village, not much happening, but we didn't mind. We went on plenty of walks and all the things that you should do on holiday, just relaxing and not really thinking much about the outside world. So there's moments just in the evening with the bench seat out in the garden, drinking some really nice wine, reading books, cooking some really nice food. So this was Saint-Cézanne, possibly about 30 minutes drive from where we were staying. So we wanted to do something slightly different, whether it was a drive out every day, just so that we were really doing as much as possible, seeing as much as possible. And this was a beautiful town. We had lunch there, dipping in and out of little rainstorms, which was good for me because it made me focus on this particular building. Possibly took about an hour. Again, using this, a really popular pen for me at the moment in this colour. There's just something about it. I think it's just this base colour that works with a lot of Posca pens. And this one again that was just around the corner, Saint-Suzanne. There's a beautiful chateau in the distance. And this is Le Mans, possibly a couple of days later. So we had lunch there, walked around. and just the difference of using pens that were of a similar colour. So you have the dark purple, you have some sort of lilac purple, and then a coral pink. This was actually the village where we were staying, this one here, and then you have the neighbouring village here. And I borrowed one of Fred's mountain bikes that was in the shed one day just to cycle up to this particular point. And it was just a really nice composition, and I had a really good hour or so of, again, trying to dodge the rain, but putting things down, not thinking about it too seriously, just having a real play around, getting out the Caran d'Ache pencil crayons and trying to capture the clouds that were moving quite quickly because the rainstorms were sort of coming through. So just getting the point of the Posca pen here very quickly, haphazardly, and with lines as well to depict how fast these clouds are moving. So this one was, it wasn't a complete success, but I think I've talked a little bit on previous sketchbook talks about drawing people, and it's something that I can always improve on. Because Natalie was there with me, it was a perfect excuse to capture her reading. Just using different pens, really experimenting, trying to get to grips, really. And you can see not terribly successful on some. I've kind of gone over with the white Posca pen to try again with a different pen to try and get the likeness. These two are much stronger than these two. But it's a difficult one for me, and I'm sure there's other illustrators and creative types out there that there's always one Achilles heel, there's one sort of weaker point that you could always be concentrating on a little bit more and progressing with. And this is certainly that for me. But it was a perfect opportunity just to have a bit of a mess around with certain pens. But it was just a while away, an hour or so, and get myself confident with trying to get a likeness of someone, really. So some were less successful than others. Fresnes-sur-Sarthe, again, just up the road, possibly a 20-minute drive. This was, we went back here quite a few times. There's a river running through the town. We had lunch there on several occasions. We actually did a little boat tour as well. You can take out the little pedal boats. And so Natalie actually went to art college, but didn't pursue it later on. So she was very rusty. And she actually brought a sketchbook and pens with her on this holiday. And the sketches and everything were amazing, and just really sort of immersing herself in the moment. So it was a really nice moment for both of us, particularly for me, to actually sit alongside someone else, someone that you're actually really close to, and understands what I do for a living, to actually share that moment. And it was a lovely composition as well. And I love tackling water. There's something about just really going all out and going to town with these different sort of mark making exercises. You will really get sort of lost in the moment creating these things. And I don't really know where it comes from. It's such a difficult subject to conquer, sketching water. Whether you're a watercolorist or whether you use pens or pencils or whatever material medium you're using. Again, Fresnes-sur-Sarthe. This was having lunch in a restaurant upstairs, so this was my view. So in between me eating and drinking. So it's a little bit haphazard, but it kind of worked. And this was Camp Freddy again. This was in the garden. So this was the sort of back end of the house, of the cottage. Really wanted to document this so I could make a print of it for him, just to say thank you. So this was Mont Saint-Michel. So this was the longest drive that we had out. It probably took us about 2 hours from base camp, if you like. And once you were there, it was an amazing place. There's a car park probably about a mile away from the actual site, and you could either get on a bus or walk it. And just to walk it was incredible, walking along the sands up towards the site itself. And there's lots of restaurants and things where you can have lunch. But we went to the very top to explore further and then came back down. So we were there for probably about half a day. And I had an idea, doing some research before I came over, to be on the sand and find a spot where I could sit on a rock. And that's what me and Natalie did. So again, just having a really nice moment. We were both sketching this together. So this one didn't take too long at all. Possibly an hour, just to encapsulate all the different blocks. Again, it's not too detailed, but it's the same principles as the Notre Dame Cathedral in Rouen, or the Parliament building in Budapest. Just to start with a particular section and make sure all the time that your eye is on the whole composition. So not to let yourself get carried away with a particular section. I think it was probably in the middle somewhere where I started this sketch, and just to get carried away with detail, because it's impossible, because you're so far away, to get detail in this anyway. But just to get a little bit of detail and a little bit of form, but not to get too engrossed in it in a particular section, and then you sort of lose your place in a way. So all the time you're kind of mentally scanning where every block, every section of this fortress is, with the castle and the cathedral on the top there. So your eyes, your eyes and your brain are always kind of working in sync together all the time. And these statues that were constantly surrounding the farmland, because you have a very sort of Catholic religious area, in particular where we were staying. And I think they're sort of a sign of good luck, to bring good crops for the year, amongst other things. But some were just wooden crosses, some were very basic designs in some kind of rockery formation, but this one was a particular favourite of mine, just a stone's throw away from where we were staying. So that was a nice hour or so, just to sit on the curb edge. And even passers-by, there was a woman in particular that drove past that stopped, and she wanted to have a look at what I was sketching, so we were chatting for a couple of minutes. Lovely locals. This was a lakeside beauty spot where a lot of people go. And I was just trying out different pens. It didn't particularly work, unfortunately. I think the black pen, it's one of these Tombrau ABT pens that normally work quite well, but but with this ink background, it wasn't that successful. But it was an experiment. I like the red one, actually. I like the red sort of shadows, capturing certain people, little moments. And it was late afternoon as well, so a lot of people had left by then. It was getting a bit windy, a little bit grey, not many people in the lake. But it was it was a page filler, really, just me experimenting, sitting on the sand, whilst Natalie went paddleboarding. This was just a various collection of what Fred has in his cottage, in his house. So putting each object in front of me, sketching it from a different angle. Again, a page filler, just whiling away an evening, drinking nice wine and listening to good music. So this was the last part of the holiday. This was in Honfleur, and we were only there for one night, unfortunately. Such a beautiful town, very reminiscent of Ramsgate, actually. Had a lovely harbour, great restaurants, great little bars, cobbled streets, so beautiful. So just decided to document that one fairly quickly. these colour combinations have proved very successful in Sketchbook 11. I think you just get into a rhythm of, you get into a certain comfort zone, I guess, if you like, of using certain colours. This one was back home, just up the road, a town called Sandwich. Believe it or not, there's a couple of, down here in Thanet in Kent, there's a lot of towns with very strange names. So we have one called Ham, and we have one called Sandwich, and we have another one called Deal. You might not believe me, but that is true. That one was less successful. I think it was the composition. I needed to have more of the surrounding area, and the ink combination didn't quite work. Probably should have left this grey out. But you know, it's a process. Some work, some don't. And you have to be really honest with yourself about them, and you have to learn from them. I'm finding that I'm becoming less precious with the sketchbooks than ever before, which is always a good thing. I go through so many different phases where I want every composition and every drawing to be perfect. And then sometimes I'm not so bothered if pages don't work out. I didn't think this one worked out particularly well just because there's too much going on. It's very busy. I'm almost trying too hard to try and create something a little different. So back in London, I think this was the day I went to see a Paul McCartney photo exhibition before it left the National Portrait Gallery. And it was a chance for me to catch up with friends and do some sketching and have a nice lunch somewhere. So this is Bar Italia, just off Old Compton Street in Soho. And really trying to tick a lot of boxes here with the wash work in before I start, immersing myself into a scene, a very busy Soho. Soho's always busy. Trying to capture people. And also layering. So this red pen work here is actually a really nice neon sign that has been there for some years. This bar itself is from 1948, I think, late 40s. So this neon sign here is actually this one here. So I just sketched it from a different angle. Again, just having a bit of a play around, not taking it too seriously, just enjoying the moment, really. And I think that's the essential thing with a lot of these sketches in this book. Just enjoying the moment. And this one too, the Royal Academy, just in the forecourt as you walk in. So there's different freebies that I get and different materials, brushes and pens and things that I don't use all the time. But occasionally, this one for instance, it's a very basic sort of sponge tool that you can sort of dip into watercolours, and I find it very useful to just use as a base colour. So it's a very light wash of blue because I knew that I wanted to do this particular composition and this sketch on my day visit to London. So I knew that there was going to be a lot of area for a sky blue colour. So I just used this particular tool, and that's the only time I use it. I can't even remember where I bought it, it's so long ago. And this one, a good friend of mine, Jonas, it was actually his photo of Victoria Station and the Orient Express that was stationed there on one of the platforms. And I love the difference in between the old and new anyway, particularly when it comes to architecture. But I thought it was a great photo anyway, and I asked permission to see if I could use it and do a sketch of it. And I have a little short film of me putting this together. So this took me about an hour. And really it's just a very simple wash, again with the old reliable Liquitex pen, the pink pen. Using a brown Posca pen for the first time actually, which I wouldn't normally use, but it actually goes quite well with these colours. And the difference between the old and the new, this time with architecture, the very new buildings that haven't actually been finished yet in the background, just opposite Victoria Station, and the old of the Orient Express train, steam train. So that was just a fun hour to put together, me filming it on a time lapse, putting an appropriate soundtrack on that one. So it's just really nice to do that if anyone follows me on Instagram, just to keep it fun and engaging, really, if nothing else. And just to show the practice of how I do these sketches, either when I'm in the studio or out and about. And for some reason, this one's upside down. Possibly too many beers during the day. So this was the last holiday of the year. This was Benidorm, which surprised me because I think a lot of people have this preconceived idea of Benidorm being, you know, lads, and very much a drinking town. But if you escape that part, there's lots of mountain biking trails, lots of boats that you can go onto different islands. The old town section of Benidorm is just amazing. Such great tapas bars and wine bars and things like that. So it's very much more the cultured end, if you like. But I did want to document the more the Benidorm that people really remember from, you know, the TV series maybe, or from sort of memories of them sort of going away, maybe themselves as a teenager, and photos and things that they've seen on TV and news articles. But it's actually an amazing. You could be sort of in Brazil or Rio or part of South America in certain sections if you hadn't been to Benidorm before. Just all these huge kind of skyscraper hotel blocks that surround the beach. And they're amazing beaches and everything else, by the way, you know, swimming out there every day, and amazing clear blue sea and skies, and really did have a good 3 or 4 days out there. But that one was upside down in the sketchbook, which made me smile after I'd finished it. I didn't realise until the end. This one was from a rooftop bar. Probably took me about an hour or so. And again, it's a really nice, engaging, you know, anyone else would sort of see this pole with all the wires surrounding it, with all the cables, as being quite boring to look at. They'd want to sort of see the rest of it, and maybe if someone else was sketching this, they'd leave that out entirely. But I really think it's an integral part of the composition, and what a place like Benidorm is. You know, you have somebody who has kind of erected this pole. They put these cables around. It's not form, it's basically function, to make other buildings work and to give them electricity, and for no other reason. So there's no aesthetic value in this whatsoever, but I find these sort of things fascinating, as with this one as well. So somebody this was in the old town, put 2 cherubs on this wall of a bar or a restaurant, and it's surrounded by all the cable work that goes into this building and the flats above. And I just find the combination of that really fascinating. So just to finish up the last couple of pages, in and around my hometown, this is Broadstairs, just up the road. Really just page fillers to kind of end the book, really. Nothing too exciting, just me really experimenting with different Posca pens and brushwork, and just having a nice afternoon walking around. And this one as well. I think this was a page where I was kind of mixing up pens and experimenting beforehand. But this is a Wetherspoons pub. It used to be the Royal Pavilion back in the day, so hence all the sort of ornate architectural work. So this one was very quick, probably took me 20 minutes, half an hour. And then this last one, it was a really nice one to end on, actually. Queen's Head Pub, which is one of the more architectural, interesting pubs on the seafront here in Ramsgate. And I sat outside just sketching it. Again, didn't take very long, and I like focusing in on a particular point, very much like the Notre Dame Cathedral in Rouen. And the guy came out and saw me sketching it, and he was the actual manager, landlord, so he wanted a print of this to actually hang up in the pub. So I thought that was a very nice compliment and thanked him. And a couple of days later, I did that. So I just sort of popped in and handed it over, and he was very impressed. So it's a really nice way of ending the sketchbook, actually, as what I thought was going to be a page filler ended up being a print actually in the pub. So that was Sketchbook 11. So lots of adventures as usual, using lots of different mediums, getting very comfortable with certain other mediums, and really trying to push the method further as we do with each sketchbook that comes along. So join me for Sketchbook 12 very soon. Thanks again.